Many wondered if this day would ever come. The Marvels now projected to do so poorly that in fact we may have reached the end game when it comes to the MCU. Ahsoka as well has now reached a point where Star Wars, well, it may continue to be the Force's female due to Kathleen Kennedy, but the chances of it actually being somewhat of a franchise that it once was, zero, no more. And that's why Disney needs to pivot at least one of these franchises, the only one that can survive. It looks like Marvel is the one, and it looks like they're watching Loki closely to see, can it get them out of the MCU Phase 5 dive? Star Wars and the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Two franchises that were behemoths, massive. And in both cases, the Walt Disney Company stepped in and moved them farther and farther and farther into divisive content that drove away fans. Star Wars started it. Marvel followed. Star Wars now, especially after Ahsoka, is largely a bit player in the entertainment industry, no longer the leading giant that it once was. Marvel, however, might be able to pull out of this abyss. And it looks like the folks over at the MCU are deciding that it's time now to make that pivot and to drop the MCU once and maybe for all. Hello, folks. Welcome back to the WDW Pro channel. We are here to explain entertainment and keep you ahead of the culture curve. It is a great joy to do so, and we're so happy that you are here with us, as well as Lorne Connor from ThatParkPlace.com, our resident guru of all things Lucasfilm, but then beyond that as well. Lorne, welcome back.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we're going to go straight into our article today. This is our jumping point, but we do have more. This, I think, indicates why the Marvel MCU has hit the point now where they're ready to pivot, whereas Star Wars never did. And Star Wars, I think, largely is just sort of a shadow of its former self. We're seeing the ratings for Ahsoka, and they're terrible. I mean, they're just really, really terrible. We know, based on Samba TV, that the finale for Ahsoka measures something like half of She-Hulk. And that's just not sustainable. That gets into just burning money when you have a $200 million project. We're looking at something similar with the Marvels, and it may be that whereas Kathleen Kennedy's studio would be, determined to stay on that path, I'm not sure that Kevin Feige and Marvel are willing to burn it all down. Let's take a look at how bad this is, though. This out of boxofficepro.com by Sean Robbins. 2023's holiday movie season gets its first tentpole release on November 10th with the 33rd chapter of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think that 33rd, folks, points to what an incredible run Marvel had before they went into the Phase 4 fiasco and the Phase 5 dive. And, we can't take much more of that. And that's really saying something considering the legacy this had. But the Marvels now has an opening weekend range of $50 to $75 million domestically, and a total range now, according to Box Office Pro, which uses their ticket pre-sales as a measurement, 121 to 189, which would mean that the Marvels would fail to reach 200 million domestically. That would be horrendous. Captain Marvel, which is the predecessor for this film, earned 426.8 million. That puts this easily under half. And the other tragic thing for Marvel is that this film comes out at a time when movie prices have risen in terms of the cost per movie ticket at a rate that exceeds historic inflationary times that we currently exist in. All that to say, Lorne, that movie tickets were way less when Captain Marvel came out. They're way more today. So when you consider then that it's going to make far less than half of Captain Marvel, we're talking about an audience reduction of something like 75%. Now, an audience reduction of 75%, I think, means that they realize they cannot continue forward. And Lauren, we'll go into our second article in a moment. I want to give you a chance to respond to this. Marvel's already come out and said that they're going to base whether or not they do more Miss Marvel on Disney Plus on the reception of The Marvels. we've already heard from some folks out there, and if we said the name, some people would know who it is. We've heard from some folks that when it comes to the Sue Storm leaks that came out about Fantastic Four, those may have been to gauge what the audience reaction would be. And I've got a feeling Marvel, they got plenty of that. They've already adjusted Daredevil, whatever you may think of that. They're keeping the X-Men name, despite the fact that, years ago, Victoria Alonso, who's left the company, had claimed, that's an outdated, antiquated term, X-Men. They're keeping X-Men. Lauren, do you think that Marvel is making the pivot, or do you think that they're going to continue forward like Star Wars has?
The indications are that they're pivoting. Everything that we're hearing seems to indicate that they know they have a problem and they're trying to make adjustments to try and deal with that. And I think that's necessary. As you said, their two major properties are failing now. It's probably best not to be trying to split their attention and fix both of them at the same time. Their focus needs to be on getting something working because of the way Marvel is structured. I think they actually probably have some advantages in trying to fix that. In that, there are sub stories within the Marvel franchise where, say, for instance, if you're a fan of Captain America, you can go and watch the Captain America movies. If you're not a fan of Thor, you don't have to go and watch the Thor movies. You'll get caught up in the big crossover movies and you won't have missed much. I think most people probably do consume most of the movies, if not all of them, but you don't have to. So it's easier to drop in and out and not pay such a penalty for doing so. Um, so that gives them an advantage. One of the disadvantages that they have, though, is that they no longer have most of the Avengers. And I think what they were trying to do was probably set up new Avengers and go in that MCU direction. That isn't going to work. And so I think they need to pivot in another way, and that is they need to get the Fantastic Four and the X Men going. They need to do both of them, and they need to handle both of them correctly. I think it's probably a question mark as to how much of a draw the Fantastic Four are. I know that there are diehard fans of the Fantastic Four, but I don't think they have quite the same pull as the Avengers. On the other hand, lots of people love the X Men, but you absolutely cannot screw that up. Especially, you've got now Hugh Jackman back into this and playing Wolverine. Uh, Despite some of the highs and lows that there were in the Fox X-Men series, I think overall people kind of like him and are willing to kind of give a pass to the lesser entries in those series. But you can't screw something up with Hugh. They've got to get all of that right.
Definitely true there, and I will say, Lauren, that we had the exclusive first scoop on Hugh Jackman joining the MCU. This was very early on, either in this channel's existence or even predating it. I'd have to go back and look. I do know that when we released that on thatparkplace.com, there were repercussions that we had to go through because there were a lot of folks out there who didn't like that we had leaked that. And especially, I think that we leaked that Hugh Jackman was being signed to a multi-movie deal. That only came out recently and was confirmed. And the source that gave us that has said to us that the current strategy is to get to that bridge now because they realize, I mean, the Eternals, just, a total collapse. So many of these Z tier items that they thought they could pull a Guardians of the Galaxy with just did not pan out. The bridge to get them to X-Men is to put Hugh Jackman with Spider-Man. And they truly believe Wolverine Spider-Man team up. That is the Avengers, and get the thing to where they can bring in the X-Men and figure out what else they can do with any remaining Avengers, any remaining top level cast that they have. But I want to identify, Lauren, what it is we're talking about for the folks out there who are thinking, what is the MCU? Or, there are going to be detractors who watch the video. So let's identify with specificity what we're talking about here. And I think the MCU and the Force is female. I think they're the same thing.
Mhm.
I think that from a uh, delineating standpoint about what this is versus what we enjoy, I think it comes down to that mantle strategy that Victoria Alonso labeled it, which is you can take characters that were popular, and you can move their attributes into a new categorization, whether it's along gender or ethnicity or what have you. And that the original character doesn't matter. It's just the attributes. And so, like, you can take Luke Skywalker and you can say, well, Luke is problematic because he's a white kid. So we're going to move that into, this new character, Rey, and she's going to be better than Luke Skywalker. And you can do that with the Hulk. You can say, well, the Hulk is, a giant masculine and form. We're going to move that. We're going to do She-Hulk, and she'll be better than the Hulk. And Loki. Well, Loki is a problem because he's a very clever and very popular male character. What if we brought in female Loki, and she's better than Loki at everything? And we've seen this time and time again. Partly what happens there too is that in order to make the audience supposedly like those characters more now, the replacement characters, right? Um, I call them the thrift store characters. The way that they try to do that is they try to damage the previous characters in their representation. So with Luke, you have him be just a despicable hermit of a man. And with Loki, you turn him into less of a god of mischief and more of a I don't know what you even call this guy that's in the current Loki, although I'm not drastically against him, but he was made more impotent, I would say, in season one. And with the Hulk, well, good grief, the Hulk is bested by She-Hulk in every way possible. And we could continue on. I mean, this has been done over and over and over. And so I think from a definition standpoint, that's what we're talking about, is this idea that original characters that were popular can be substituted out for replacement characters that are similar but are postmodern and shifted along the gender and ethnicity lines.
I'd like to make an interjection here if I can.
Go for it.
And that is that I want to make a distinction that comic book fans are not against female superheroes.
Oh no, definitely not.
There's lots of beloved female superheroes, and I think that more of the issue has to do with the mantle strategy that you're talking about, and it's not just for the ideological reasons that happens. You also have the issues with, in some cases, potentially expiring copyright on the names of certain characters and royalties paid to the original creators' families. And I think that Marvel, especially, although DC as well had some issues with this, where in order to try and get around paying royalties to creators' families, they would then create new iterations of the characters that were new creations and shift their names to them. And the audience is never a fan of that. They like what they grew up with, they like these heroes and what they stand for. And when you try to treat them as though they're disposable, that creates a subconscious reaction. Now, I think that part of the reason that this is going on with Marvel is also that it's aligning with the DEI initiatives that the studios got behind. And so you have this almost Faustian kind of a melding of these two awful concepts that they thought they were going to be able to pass by and get some culture points for, and it just didn't work out that way.
Yeah, and I think you make a great point, Lauren, because let's say this: had Marvel decided that their Phase 4 was going to be led by Storm of the X-Men, well, Storm is an original character. She's a woman, but she has her own backstory, her own, lore that goes with her and her abilities. It's all original.
And
She's not
she
a
has led
copy.
the X-Men. She has led the
Yes,
X-Men in the past. So you're not elevating her outside of the station that she would normally have held within the comics.
but the strategy was for both Star Wars and Marvel to do these hand-me-down characters who get all the stuff that a male, usually a white male character had, and then make them better, and then simultaneous go back and make that original character that's beloved, make them worse, or violate their history and destroy their the virtues within, so that you'll force the audience then to like this new character. Right? It's not enough for Rey to be better than Luke. You've got to also diminish Luke, and it's not enough for Hulk to be bested by She-Hulk. You've got to make Hulk be some kind of goofball who just doesn't get it because he doesn't understand loss like a woman does on a daily basis.
And I think this is a misunderstanding that lots of people that are involved in all kinds of production, whether it be movies or television or toy production or any of that stuff, is they don't seem to understand that we can actually like characters that are different at the same level. It's like we can like them just as much, but there's this idea that we cannot we have to promote the newer character, and the only way that we can do that is to make you somehow dislike or point out the flaws of the old character to make this one look better. That's not
And
really the way it works. We can like all of these things.
maybe Lauren, this is a wake up call for everybody behind this. There are billions and billions of dollars riding on being successful with these pieces of narrative. And beyond that, these pieces of narrative are also highly important to our culture and to the way that generations look at the world. I mean, that's why we do entertainment, right? I mean, we work all day. Many of us work very, very hard. And the thing that we look forward to while we're working is spending time with our families. And often that involves being entertained with them. And we look forward to spending time with our friends. And often that involves being entertained with them. And sometimes that's with sports, but oftentimes that's going to a movie or it's watching the big TV show or what have you. And there's something deeply ingrained and important in that experience and that shared experience. And so there's a lot of money that goes into crafting these shared experiences. And as we get ready to go into X-Men, just a thought, guys over at Marvel, guys and girls who are creating this, you've got Storm, you've got Rogue, you've got Psylocke, we could keep going. You've got Mystique. We can keep going. You have a plethora of awesome female characters who are original and who do not steal the powers of others, except for Rogue, which is implicitly part of her powers. But listen, don't screw them up. You have what you want. You just have to make the other characters be cool as well. Like Nightcrawler can still be cool, even though he's a guy. Cyclops can still be as cool as Cyclops can be. I know Scott Summers is not the cool, but Wolverine can still be cool. You don't have to denigrate them to bring the women up. Now, but let's look and see what happens when you actually do denigrate the men and when you do sort of make yourself into a intersectional feminism kind of display. This is what happens to you. This is out of CBR.com by Lee Freitag. The Marvels is tracking to have the MCU's worst opening weekend ever. That's how bad this is. Even if the Marvels came in on the higher end of projections, $75 million would still be less than half of the $153.4 million the first installment in MCU sub-franchise Captain Marvel opened back in 2019. Captain Marvel ended its theatrical run with $428.8 million domestically, while the Marvels is currently tracking for a final domestic haul of $189. Now, remember also, the Marvels has this tremendously high budget. I don't trust the numbers yet, so we're not going to report them. They're reporting them here, but we're not going to go with that because every time we get numbers out of Disney, it turns out to be way, way higher. So we'll wait and get the tax filings, or we'll wait and get the actual numbers from some sort of leak. Here's what's interesting to me, though, Lauren. I mean, this is coming in as the worst ever, and that's, gosh, after the Eternals. I mean, you would have thought that the Eternals would never be beaten. After Ant-Man, Quantumania, you thought that had to be the bottom. And this is going to beat those roundly. This is 40% lower than the Eternals. So, Lauren, I think that Disney is in a survival mode here. Star Wars is where it is. You and I have talked about what happened with Ahsoka. It really was the last glimmering being put out because there were those who trusted that Dave Filoni could do something. That's not going to happen. And I think Dave Filoni actually proved himself incompetent. So Star Wars is where it is. That's a franchise that is in a place that it's never been before, and a lot of fans don't yet realize just how badly off Star Wars is. Marvel can be redeemed. There's potential here to redeem the franchise, and I think Disney, in an act of self-preservation, and Kevin Feige perhaps as well, they will drop the intersectional feminism, the forces female, the MCU, whatever you want to call it. I think they're willing to drop it. Not because they believe it should be dropped, but rather because they're capitalists and also because their legacies are riding on this. You
Okay,
seem to
so
have some pushback. Go for it, Lauren.
yeah, I'm going to give you a positive and a negative. The positive isn't going to sound real positive, but I'm hoping you'll go with me a little bit. One of the reasons they may be willing to attempt this with Marvel and not Star Wars is they may be not convinced that the reason that their fortunes have gone so badly is because of the narrative decisions that they've made. So they may not want to react too quickly by changing everything everywhere all at once, if you get my drift there. So if they make adjustments to one franchise and that gives them a positive result, that will give them confidence to then make the adjustment to the other franchise. But that will take time, and the audience is not going to be patient, and I don't blame them. So I think that that may be one reason why they're doing this. The pushback part, and we talked about this backstage before we got started recording, was you were saying you think that they're willing to do this, to make the changes that are necessary now because they're in survival mode. I think that depends on who's they. You still have an awful lot of people there at Marvel Studios, including Kevin and others, where this is their ideology, and they want to use these characters because it gives them a platform to push their agenda. And you can see what happened when Disney was trying to make adjustments under Chapek, and the creatives started throwing unholy fits. Um, I think that the impetus for this is coming from Bob because Bob's under fire from all sides. Something has to be done. His legacy is absolutely at stake. The question
Unraveling.
is, the question is, can he um can he rein in these unruly employees underneath him where Chapek was completely hobbled by them? You may say that he can if he is considered a strong leader, if the people inside are willing to support him, not knowing what would come in if he were not there. Chapek didn't have that advantage because Iger was trying to undermine him at every turn. So I'm not quite sure how that shakes out, but I know those creatives, they're not going to turn loose of it unless they're booted out the door. So
We,
I think
that's a fantastic point. Look, did you have one more?
just that I think if Bob really does want to try and turn this around, he's going to have to make some sacrifices. I think some heads are going to have to roll that haven't rolled yet to get the message through to the creatives. You do not control this. You are employed by us. We have the benefit of this IP under our control. You will respect it. If he's not willing to do that, they'll sense his weakness and they'll continue to create turmoil for him.
Well, Lauren, I think that with Marvel, they have an easier path forward because of the female characters that we listed off, right? There are unique female characters that fans know and they like. It's
Yes,
much
but
more difficult with Star Wars. I don't
that's
even know how they fix it because the female characters are loathed. Fans hate them. And then on the other side of this, Lauren, let me say this: talking about how Bob Iger is going to make this happen. I think at Pixar, he's already doing it by saying to Pixar, you're going to be a sequel assembly line. And the idea there is by doing sequels, you're going to make sequels to characters that are popular. And those characters that are popular came out before we all lost our minds.
But he's got to tread carefully there too, because that's very much aping the strategy that Eisner had, where they were doing all of these direct to DVD sequels that, in my opinion, were of lower quality and actually lessened the value of the IPs that they had. I don't think that Pixar has the magic anymore. They can make all the sequels they want to, but are they going to capture that lightning in a bottle?
And
Um,
let's say this too, Lauren, the magic is the genius, right? And if you don't have geniuses, then you don't have magic. And that's what happened in Ahsoka. Like everybody wants to come up with all these reasons why Ahsoka was unsuccessful. Ahsoka was unsuccessful because there's not a genius behind it. I, I
well,
listen. Dave Filoni did what he did with animation stuff. But if you're going to introduce a villain who is an intellectual, stalwart who will set terror into the audience and to the characters in this universe because of his intellectual prowess, you have to also be intellectually in leagues ahead of most people in order to craft that. And we found out that that's not the case at all.
yeah, and a large part of that problem too is that I think there's a misunderstanding of Filoni got elevated to the status of genius, and he did produce some good quality content. And a lot of people would argue that the Clone Wars rehabilitated the image of the prequels, and I think that there's arguments that could be made on either side there. Um, That said, it's still a niche audience. That's the diehards and a specific subset of the diehards. And when all the praise got heaped on Filoni for that, they started looking at that as though he's the genius, he's the potential savior for Star Wars. And they lost sight of the fact that no, Star Wars is much bigger than some of these other things. You have to appeal to a broad swath of people to get the lightning in a bottle that Star Wars was. Um, Clone Wars and Rebels is more geared towards a younger audience, but your casuals and the people that will go and buy your movie tickets and get excited about things, the big cinematic releases, they don't watch the cartoons. That's the diehards. Now the diehards will bring in more of the casuals through word of mouth, but if you've lost them, the casuals are not going to be as stoked to see something, and so they've got some real problems there.
So, Lauren, we talked about how Marvel is paying attention to the Marvels and making publicly, we know they're making big decisions based on its performance. Now we see what the performance is going to be. We see that it's not going up against Dune 2. Dune 2 was rescheduled. So it doesn't have any competition. It's going to fail of its own merit or lack thereof. When it comes to Loki, though, we're also hearing, Lauren, that Marvel is watching this one closely because this does not follow in the MCU format. The first season did. And, viewership took a hit once people saw that this was another bait and switch situation. In the second season, it's looking like, and based on what I've heard, although I don't know what happens in the final 2 episodes, it's looking like you've got 3 male leads this time. They're all fantastic. Okay. And that's not to say that women can't be fantastic. It's to say that Tom Hiddleston, Owen Wilson, and Kaewon Kwan, they're just incredible. So here's my question for you, Lauren. What did you think about the second episode? Did it hold your interest as well as the first episode for Loki season 2?
Okay, so I've got to give some caveats here at the start, as I sometimes have to, and say that I haven't watched Loki season 1 for over a year. And so my memory of some of the events of the first season are a little bit fuzzy. And so that hurt me a little bit more in the second episode than it did in the first episode of season 2. The other thing is that I saw some comments the last time that we talked about Loki about people not liking the show because this isn't comic book Loki. And I understand that. I do think that comic books have a lot more leeway to have their characters played differently because of the existence of the multiverse and because a cinematic property is not a comic book property. So that doesn't cause me any distress when I'm watching something like this. I enjoyed the second episode, but I was watching it with my son, and there were a couple of times when he got restless and distracted me a little bit. So I missed a little bit in the
Well,
ending.
and if it was really, really good, that probably wouldn't happen.
Oh,
Because this one was a little bit slow, I think, and it could
I,
lose your attention.
I did enjoy it though. Still, I had a few more misgivings about this episode than I did the first one, but I was still having a good time. I don't really have any insight into where the series is going. I did start to have a theory about whether one of those 3 leads that we were talking about is not what they seem to be, but I'm kind of curious to see where that goes.
Absolutely. Lauren, I'll just say that for me, I said that the first episode of season 2 for me was a 6 out of 10, and that's a positive score. I think the second episode is a 5 out of 10. It's right in the middle. That overall, I'm still positive on this, and I'm hoping, based on what I've heard from some others who have seen the next 2 episodes in previews, although I have not, I'm hopeful that I'm still going to be in positive territory. This doesn't rise up to the potential that this series had in the very first 2 episodes of the very first season. After that, it was used as a propaganda cudgel, and it was even difficult for me to give the second season a chance. But here we are. If they use it though, and it's classic television where we don't have to have the woman be the best at everything, and where the men don't have to be bad by default because they're men, or incompetent, or impotent, or whatever however you want to say it, then I could enjoy this. I don't think it's a masterpiece, but it's enjoyable. And after the absolute I don't even know how to describe how awful Ahsoka was. That last episode was just so awful. After that, I can see why people would think this is a masterpiece. But it's not One Piece, and it's not Stranger Things, and it's not some of those other fantastic shows that have captured the cultural zeitgeist, but it's at least viewable and enjoyable. Fair?
Yeah, I mean, this second episode, I would say I enjoyed the first half more than I did the second half.
Oh, yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I liked seeing. I can't think of the name that he chose for himself, but the variant who's a movie star
Yep.
trying to live out his life. That I thought was all fun.
I
It
thought
was
I thought him getting under the skin of Mobius like that was a little bit that was a stretch.
Well, I enjoyed getting to see Loki actually use his magic powers again and be a clever god of mischief. I thought that was
Yeah,
all
yeah.
fun. A lot of the fun of Loki for me also has to do just with the sheer surrealism of the TVA, which is kind of bold. It is a comic booky concept, but you actually are asking your audience to go with you a little more than I think they normally would. And so far, I think they've earned the right to do it. The one thing that offended me about this episode, though, was that key lime pie. I don't know what that was, but it was not key lime pie, and I would
Green
not
Jello
feel
is what I thought it was. I thought the same thing, Laura. I thought, man, it looks like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle mutagen
I,
pie. Is
I,
what that thing looks like. It's
I
radioactive.
I would not feel good eating it. I don't think anything good could probably come of that.
Well, who knows how foods are made and designed when they're in a timeless space. I don't know. But Lauren, I'm hopeful for Loki. I'm hopeful because Marvel needs to make the pivot. As much as we give Disney a hard time when they deserve it, I don't want Marvel to disappear. I think the characters are worthwhile. I don't care for the company that holds them right now, but I would like to see Marvel remain viable. I don't want to see what happened to Star Wars happen to more franchises because these are characters that we love. And I'd like for them to at least continue on in some capacity so I don't take any joy in the idea of them being destroyed.
No, and I think I would give the same advice to Marvel fans that I'm kind of giving to Star Wars fans right now, which is that the original material is still out there. And the advantage of the Marvel material is that you have decades more material than what we got for Star Wars. There's a lot of Star Wars material and they've been there for decades too, but not as long as Marvel. You
Right.
could
Not at
take.
not at the volume and not yeah.
Yeah, and so if you want to go back to the original sources, you always can, and there's some great stuff there. So I don't. I'm hopeful that eventually Marvel Comics gets things turned around. I don't think I've seen anything readable out of them for several years now. I'm hoping that maybe if they get the MCU sorted out, maybe they'll start figuring out what to do there. Time will tell.
It would be nice, and I think now is the time for companies to realize that whatever the social experiment was, it's time to drop turning the age-old boys are better than girls or girls are better than boys on the playground, turning that into a mature argument amongst adults. Drop that. It's time to move on from that. Uh, we're here to say that if you're a female fan of Marvel, great. If when Marvel brings in female characters that are original and cool in their own way, that's great. But this idea of denigrating men to uplift women and women have to be the heroes, men like this stuff is just stupid. It's intellectually below all of us, women and men, everybody. This is just pathetic, and it's getting pathetic results now. So let's drop it and let's move on to something that's better, stuff that's timeless. I think we're all ready for that. Lorne, tell us where we can go find you on this great big beautiful web out there.
You can find me at that park place. You can find me in the chat on Valiant Renegade stream on Sundays, most weekends. Although lately I've been having trouble staying there for the whole stream. You can find me at Lauren Connor on X or Lauren Connor 9030 on YouTube.
All right, folks. Lorne, of course, is a fan favorite. So happy to have him on. Make sure you go check out all of the stuff that he's up to out there. I don't think you'll be disappointed. We also hope you are not disappointed with our efforts today to explain entertainment and keep you ahead of the culture curve. Is the pivot happening? Is the MCU truly dying with the Marvels? Let us know down in the comments below. We covet your comments. We care about what you think. And if you think that we did a decent job here, consider clicking that like button, share, subscribe, and when you click it, yes, you do indeed stick it to the algorithms, it's the notification bell. We have some major deep dives coming out this next week where we are going to be chatting about topics that stretch my ability and perhaps even the abilities of my guests. Folks, I don't think you're going to want to miss what we are going to try to tackle in the forthcoming days, so stick with the Pro channel. Check out the Pro Show Thursday, 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. And folks, as we always end these, wherever you are and whatever you're doing, keep learning, keep growing, and keep having fun.
Oh.
What are you doing?
Well, you see, I wanted to get some inside scoops on Disney and their, different corporations, if you know what I mean. So I figured, by looking into this fistbowl and sucking it randomly with my own energy that I pay for, you paid for, I could do the whole experience where you can be a master and spy on your targets.
You're an idiot. If you want to get the inside scoop on Disney, or even other media organizations, you should check out thatparkplace.com and subscribe to WDW Pro's YouTube channel. That'd be way easier, more accurate, and, less dumb.
Are you saying I won't get accurate information this way?
No, you can't.
Who'd have think?